Welcome friends, fiends, and familiars to the Comic Fiends Comic Friends. On this show, I have conversations with friends from all over about comics. In this week's episode, I have a chat with a very good friend that's really into Marvel. This was my first in-person session, so you'll actually hear a bit more background noise than usual. Welcome to the Comic Fiends Comic Friends. This week we have my friend, Mr. Excellent. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for interviewing, man.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. So let's start. Go ahead and introduce yourself. I guess, who are you? What do you...
Hi, I'm going by Mr. Excellent. I've been Mr. Excellent since 2002 when Sony had their Spider-Man forums for their movies, and that's kind of my starting point into the world of comics and things geek, I suppose.
All right. Cool. So I know the answer to this, but I'm assuming most folks don't. So what kind of comics do you read? And this can include anything. It can be pretty free, pretty broad here. It doesn't necessarily have to be comic books. You can list everything you like.
Yeah. Well, I guess in terms of comics, I've read mostly from Marvel. I started out with J. Michael Straczynski's run. It was just, I randomly found some Spider-Man comics at the library around the time the movie came out, and I was like, hey, I love the movie, let's see what it's based off of. And, I guess eventually I found out JMS's run was a little bit controversial, but, eventually I found Stan Lee's, work and the essential reprints that they came out with. And, from there I just kind of picked and choose some of the famous stories from back in the day and just kind of jumped around from there. I'm really, really into just, the new wave of movies and TV shows, and it's just really fun stuff.
Okay, so you'd say that you lean more towards comic books than the cape stuff, superhero stuff. Or does it? Or do you also read anything else?
I think it's just anything that's inspired. You've put me on to some interesting things.
Sure. Yeah.
I've read some Goon, some of the little bit of the Hellboy stuff. I was just Hellboy I guess gets a little bit more. I guess it's not superhero-ish, but
but it's still good stuff.
Yeah,
it's maybe more paranormal investigation.
Right. It's just if it's inspired, I eventually I check it out whenever I get the opportunity to. It's just I don't know what I look for really. It's just a lot of it ends up being funny in its own way. The character. I think the character work is usually what'll draw me to, piece of fiction, really.
Mm-hmm. Cool, man. That's cool. I like to hear that. That's sort of what you look for. So, you briefly touched on this. So you said you started reading comics after, what was that? This is the first Spider-Man film, and then you went to go investigate yourself. Is that your start? That's your origin for getting in.
Definitely. Where I come from. We actually don't have a comic book shop. I guess there have been a couple of attempts at, doing that, but those haven't really lasted too long. We've had a couple of hole-in-the-wall establishments, but, I guess as the movies gained popularity, there was a little bit of a resurgence in certain stories. They would reprint certain things. Like, for example, when Spider-Man 3 came out, as infamous as that movie has become in some circles, the Venom saga was re-released, so I checked that out when that came out. Recently, X-Men Days of Future Past, they reprinted that story, so, I had an opportunity to check that out.
That's a single issue, isn't it? It's not as... they made a movie out of it, and I think they launched it off of certain things, or included a bunch of things, but the Days of Future Past is actually pretty short. As far as from what I remember.
It was,
or is it a miniseries? Or...
I guess the trade paperback that was recently released, it was kind of like a collection. There was like a Dante's Inferno sort of story with Nightcrawler and the X-Men, and that kind of tied together. So some of the trade paperbacks they put together do contain some extra issues, but I guess point being, there was like a re-release of that, so I got to check that out. But yeah.
All right. So I think you've briefly answered this also a little early, but what is it about comics that you really like? Like, what can you get from this media that you really can't get anywhere else? Because that's, obviously they're different forms, and you're going to get something different out of it, even though they contain some of the same elements. But I feel like you would seek out, even though you've seen a movie or a TV show that you like, you would seek out the source material, and does that deliver something different to you that you wouldn't?
Yeah, it's different mediums, you get a different experience. With the comic book, I feel it's much more immersive. They have time to go into a character's day-to-day experiences and what's going on, and there's not really a limit to how many characters your favorite character can interact with. You don't have to worry about this studio owns this character and that studio owns that. The sandbox is much bigger. It's the original sandbox. And while some people find it daunting, like, oh my gosh, this character has like 40 years of back history, I'm kind of like, this is amazing, because there's nothing worse than being into something and then having to wait a year before next thing comes out. So
totally agree.
With comics, it's like it's a universe of stories that, it's finite, but
there's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's a lot. Yeah.
It may as well be infinite, considering there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah. Right.
So
it's just you're saying that sort of because of there's so much content that already exists, that even though there's something new that's coming out that more people people see a glimpse of on the big screen or on the small screen, that it's unlike a book that or a short series that it's got a few what are we coming on, something like 60 years 50 years of at least Marvel.
Yeah, there's Marvel. DC, it's multi generations now. Well, I guess that's the same with Marvel, but nearly double the amount of time. So
and that also includes a lot of stuff, because DC ended up swallowing a lot of smaller companies to get to where it was before it became DC. Oh, wow. So that does include stuff that wasn't DC to start. So Charleston and Fawcett and the companies that contain Shazam and The Question, if you're familiar with them, those sort of predated DC as it was. But that's so. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point. Is that it's very easy to reach the end of a book series and then that's it, or you have to wait a lot longer before something. But here you can get to the end of it and think, well, there's all this other stuff I can go check out now. I can.
Yeah, it's just really satisfying to have, and there's never one take on a character that's been around for that long. So there's if you don't like this version of the character, you might be into like another. So whether you're talking Batman or Superman or Spider-Man, it's just there's lots of different ways you can access that character, so
that leaves you're right, it lends to itself, because it leaves plenty of room. The character almost exists more as a concept. There's a few things that they have to stick to, and then writers can pass it around and sort of push in a direction that they feel like that would highlight, they could still stick to the tenets of the character, but then put their own spin on it while still remaining true to it. And then sometimes they challenge it or they break it to purists' dismay, I guess.
Well, and that's it's funny that it's so controversial because I think to be a purist, I think sometimes these people ignore, I don't want to ignore is not the right word, but I think maybe there's not enough attention put on the fact that there are different eras of a character's history that highlight different assets of what those characters are. So for example, like, okay, Sam Raimi, he grew up with 60s Spider-Man, and so at least in his mind, when he came out with those movies, he was making sort of a tribute to what he was familiar with.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah,
and even though that incarnation has inspired the incarnations that followed, the characters changed with time, and so. Sorry, I lost track.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I agree with you there. I think that the characters made in these times are sort of meant to speak to that era, and so become in a way like period pieces for that work. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like within the comic itself, the style and the appearance reflects the time that it's taking place in, and just due to production, the time sort of passes in a weird. Peter Parker is eternally. Late 20s, early 30s. Bruce Wayne is eternally early 30s, something like that. Yeah, but you see the environments change around them. Gotham's Gotham, but Gotham in 2016, it's as it is now. I would say still would look different from Gotham in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s.
Right. It's just it's as you said, if there's like a central theme or certain ideas, even if an author of a work is trying to remain true to those themes or ideas, being true to that idea 20 years from now isn't going to look the same. That's why a lot of people have a hard time accepting any of the newer incarnations of Spider-Man. Like when you look at the cartoon, the Ultimate Spider-Man, it's popular as it is. There's a lot of dissenters with that. Andrew Garfield, 2 movies, that was pretty controversial. The way that Mark Webb chose to portray that character. And
do you know what he claimed? So with Sam Raimi, we said that his was the '60s Spider-Man. What would Mark Webb's be if he had one? Would it be closer to Ultimate, you think, or do you?
I think it was supposed to be closer to Ultimate in some ways, just because of the time that Ultimate was written.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, it seemed like he was trying to remain true to the original story. Bringing Gwen in, even though Peter didn't meet her in high school in the canon, in the original canon.
Right, that's right. That was college, right?
It was college.
Yeah.
But Gwen was certainly not like, Ultimate Gwen. So, and
we'll elaborate on that. I'm not actually sure about what do you mean by that? I'm behind. I haven't read through all of Ultimate yet, but
okay. Ultimate Gwen had a little bit of punk rock mentality.
Oh, okay.
She had a troubled relationship with her father, sort of taken in as like a surrogate, or I'm sorry, Aunt May kind of took her in sort of like a surrogate parental figure.
Right. Okay, I'd seen glimpses of that. But I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so it was just, it was a lot different in the Ultimate books, and they try to give her some similar traits, as sort of like a wink or a nod to the original. Like, Peter will just sort of, casually throw out, Gwen may be just as smart as I am, and, they may have been dating for a short stint of time or something. I'm having a hard time remembering right now. But, on a whole, she was a much different take on the character. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that, yeah, because I mean, I didn't go through that era. I've read sort of about it, but not actually read that stuff, or like the old stuff as well as Ultimate. A lot of people know. A lot of people know Mary Jane, but then a smaller group of people know that Gwen Stacy was his first girlfriend, and then beyond that, there's not much else they know. She was his first girlfriend, and then that's
her first
his
first
girlfriend,
real love interest. But I mean,
right,
yeah,
right. You know what? I think a work that the only work that I've read that really contained a bit more of her than just articles or wiki info on her that I'd read was Jeff Loeb's Spider-Man Blue.
Oh yeah,
right?
Spider-Man Blue.
You read that? You read that one, right?
Yeah, that one was. It was because I know that they've done a few. I don't know how I would describe it, but I mean, Daredevil has yellow.
Yes.
Hulk has gray. Yes. I haven't read gray.
I think I need to read gray. I don't know if I've read that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What they were doing in that one, but in Spider-Man Blue, it was. They really didn't give you much in the way of Gwen's point of view, but you did get to sort of take a look back after all those years of how Peter felt about her and just his perception of her and how she impacted his life. So
right. Yeah, because even in that work, I feel like we didn't really get what she was thinking or what she was actually striving for in her own life before she ended up passing. But it was sort of funny in that work. I think he states like in the very beginning that Mary Jane sort of not allows him, but in a weird way, like allows him to hang on to this memory because he's just going upstairs and like thinking about Gwen Stacy, even though he's married to Mary Jane at this point. It's your dead girlfriend, so I'm not even gonna. Yeah, man, go ahead.
Yeah.
There's no chance, so you can go ahead and pine for her.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird.
I think it was just something to get the story going.
Yeah.
But once they got that out of the way, there was some pretty good work in there.
Yeah. Highly recommend anything Jeff Loeb does, just because it's solid. It's usually a good read, and afterwards I have to just sit and stare at a wall because of how what did I just go through?
Well, and gosh, I can't believe this is so much. Did he wrote The Long Halloween, right? Or
yes,
okay,
yes,
yeah. It's been a while, but I know that The Long Halloween. I remember seeing parts of that in The Dark Knight, like the court scene where everyone's lying about who's in charge of
right.
the I guess Maroni's organization or something like that. So, but yeah, Jeff Loeb he's got some good stuff.
Oh yeah, fantastic! Just good. Everything is good.
And I mean, granted, there's a lot of gaps in what I've read. And, like I said, it kind of pick and choose from some of the classic stories that have sort of inspired, like the TV shows. Like I guess the X-Men cartoon show kind of hits the entire spectrum of the comics. The one back from the 90s hit just about every story that I can think of at that point in time.
Yeah, it was kind of shorthand for the stories, I'd say.
Yeah.
It was a cartoon in the 90s. I feel like it had a budget that they could only do so much. And they did a weird bit of... I've seen this comparison online somewhere that it's sort of... there's so many X-Men, right?
Yeah.
And there's this core group of X-Men that you have to focus on. I don't know who made that decision, but a lot of the times it'd be, "Hi, I'm Iceman," and then at the end of the episode, "I'm Iceman, and you'll never see me again, so goodbye forever." And it felt like that for a lot of...
Which was odd because, I mean, Iceman, you have Spider-Man and his amazing friends. I mean, it was a character that people knew about.
Sure, yeah.
Very popular character.
One of the founding members of the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Snow in his weird snowy form.
So I mean, you know, whoever was behind some of those decisions, I mean, there certainly are like certain arcs that people remember watching. And so, you know, you got a friend who's, oh, you know, I remember the story about Asteroid M. So then, you know, I go and I search out, you know, what story inspired that, which I actually haven't for that one specifically, but I mean, just, you know, as an example, you know, it's the same with, you know, with Batman or you know, I'm not really so sure about like the older Iron Man animated series back in the 90s that Fox had.
I don't know. I never saw it. I had a toy from it. Like it was like one of my first like conscious decisions of asking my mom for a superhero toy. But yeah, I don't think I actually really watched the show. I remember the intro a little bit, but beyond that, nothing.
It's it's definitely something. I mean, not everybody, you know, likes it, but I'm one of those, you know, I like having something, you know, colorful and light on in the background as I'm, you know, nodding off. And it's not that I don't like the material, but I mean, that's definitely one that's kind of fun to have in the background, and every now and then I can, you know, catch what's going on. But Iron Man got really good.
Really?
I don't know so much about the show, but I mean, the comic book after Warren Ellis, he did the Extremis story back in, I think it was like the early 2000s.
That's right. Yeah.
Or maybe it was the early to mid 2000s. But then that set the stage. I guess it was 1 or 2 years later. Maybe it was right after. But Matt Fraction, when he took over, and he did some really good Iron Man stories for a while that inspired, you know,
the film.
Parts of it, like there's like certain elements from just the way that, you know, he was writing it that, you know, you can definitely see in the movies. So, yeah,
okay, yeah. I think I don't think I've gone through Fraction's run on it, but I did read Extremis. I didn't know that Fraction followed, but I guess Fraction. But anyway, yeah, I remember reading Extremis, and I think it was sort of before the lead into 3. Or before we even really knew what 3 was going to be about. And I think at some point they released a promo image of 3, and it had Tony Stark with like parts of the suit on, like he was fighting like two dudes, and his arm was up, but only like part of the armor was on. And I remember getting really excited because like visually the like in Extremis, we had the parts coming flying at him in pieces, and that was part of the test. And to finally be able to, wow, like it's this soon we're gonna see that. You know, I mean, it's not that I feel like I mean, I'm underselling it here. I'm sure it was a lot of work, but it didn't seem that complicated to have done it sooner. But also, they still needed to establish Iron Man, and for them to deliver. I think, you know, for whatever problems Iron Man 3 had, the suits was not one of them.
Definitely. I mean, it was,
and seeing that the pieces fly on him into action, like that was just, you know,
that was a lot of fun. Definitely. I think well, you know, now that I said that Matt Fraction's work, you know, sort of inspired what's going for, like what's going into the character of Tony Stark in the movies, I'm having trouble thinking of something specific, because I know that Robert Downey Jr. definitely put his own stamp on the character.
Oh yeah,
and they've
1000% yes. Yeah.
You know, it's like he sort of inspired. I think because of how successful they were, you know, casting him, he sort of inspired the casting decisions that have followed. You know, Chris Pratt being the most prominent example to me right now. Like,
really?
Yeah, like
I thought you were going to say Chris Evans, but go on. Go on.
They wanted, James Gunn, you know, has come out and he said, you know, he wanted somebody who could be, you know, Star-Lord, like as a persona.
Yes.
And you know, I haven't read a whole lot of Guardians, but you know, from what I have read, you know, Peter Quill isn't exactly like the way that he is in the movies. You know, it's very, very much a Chris Pratt, you know, version of it.
Yeah, I guess I'd argue that when Guardians was coming out, I went and read, I think, from the 2008 relaunch of the Guardians title. I guess I think it was pretty quiet for a long time, but it was I'm gonna forget the exact arcs that they played, but it was this Annihilation Wave and I have to look this up. I'm terrible, but it's like Annihilation Wave and Conquest and something going on like some techno virus thing that was also going on. And I read, like, it's been a while at this point, but I read all that stuff, and I'd agree that that doesn't necessarily match the perception or the definition that they set for Star-Lord because in the comics he came off, if I'm remembering correctly, he was like a tactical guy, kind of a commander position. He knew what he was gonna do, but he also was fine to wing it, which I think that we got that from Chris Pratt. But I can't, if I had to define a personality from that, what I read, I don't think I really have one. It was cool space adventures, and I'm fine with being corrected on this because it's been long enough that I might have just forgotten. Besides him being like reluctant space hero.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I wouldn't be the one to correct you on that.
No, if somebody
yeah.
the internet's a big place. I'm sure someone knows better and can give me a better, or could explain it better. But that's just what it didn't, for me, it didn't leave an impression that I remember now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't, I'm not saying I didn't like it. It's just that's, like he's the cool guy. He's the cool space guy with the cool mask. Mm-hmm. That's that's the guy, and that's all I really had for him.
I was just thinking specifically on James Gunn interviews that he was doing around the time that they were doing press for the movie. I guess he was very close to the casting decisions, and so like when he casted Dave Bautista as Drax, that character was definitely, it was created with him in mind for sure, and at that point in time, I feel like that was the best work that he had done as an actor, and now he came out in Spectre this year.
I heard about that. Yeah.
I'm sure he's grown. I haven't had a chance to see that movie yet, but
right.
Just again, kind of going along with the lines of Ant-Man. I guess there's another one. Where Stephen Lang, right? Did I get the name wrong?
Oh, jeez.
Lang. I know it's Lang.
Scott Lang.
Scott Lang. There it is.
Yeah.
Wow. My bad.
No, that's cool.
But I mean, Paul Rudd, he came on, he helped write probably more so than originally was planned after Edgar Wright departed,
okay.
The character definitely, he definitely fills that role, very, very well. So how do we get onto this?
I think we were trying to say that I think this is one of those like art imitates life, imitates art kind of situations, because I feel like I haven't read anything recent from Ant-Man specifically, but I feel like the presence of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark sort of affected how he was written in the comics, right? Yeah. And then so the same thing happened. I'm pretty sure it happened with Chris Pratt and that sort of affected. There was some event going on in All New X-Men, and he showed up. And he was dating Kitty Pryde for some time, and it felt a bit like Chris Pratt's Star-Lord when I was reading it. I was like, okay, or at least that's maybe that's me projecting it because that's what I'd recently seen. But I mean, maybe the same thing happened with Scott Lang. I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't gotten to that part yet.
Well, there may be a lot of people that would agree with you that it is the art imitating what's come out in the movies, because
it's in the public consciousness, right? Like that's,
definitely.
That might be what they're looking for when they go.
It's no coincidence that when. Just going back to Spider-Man, that's what I'm most familiar with. When Spider-Man 3 came out, think it was Back in Black. That was around that storyline it came up around that time.
Okay.
There
Is that when he put on the black suit, but it was a cloth version? Or?
Yeah, it was a cloth version of it. He was going after King. It was after Civil War. Aunt May had.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Yeah. What was it? Gosh, the man is a legend. Alex Ross. There it is. Alex Ross. There was an Alex Ross cover that came out this week, actually, of the new Wasp, and kind of looks like the Hope Van Dyne prototype Wasp.
Oh, okay.
Suit.
Yeah.
From spoiler.
No, whatever. Yeah.
From Ant-Man.
Yeah.
This past summer, but it's the movies are in the public consciousness. It's helping the medium in some ways, and at the very least, if people are buying the comics, then the industry's still going. You're not going to have to, I guess, run into the problem that I had growing up here, which was that these sort of stores
they weren't available to you.
Just weren't available. There was no. Guess there wasn't enough traction, where I was from. Now it's kind of like, everybody seems to be into it in some way or form.
Right. And you can get stuff, you can go to Barnes & Noble, you can order stuff online now, you can read it digitally. Like, they have their official digital stuff. Yeah, that's the thing. And so it's a lot more accessible, even though you might not have, like, a comic book shop around.
Yeah, right? Certainly. Nothing like going into the store and just, but...
Yeah, it's true. Twice it's happened to me already, where we walked in and walked out with a book I that we didn't know we were going to be buying, which is recently, and I'm still working on them, the Miss Marvel hardcover, with the new Miss Marvel. And the last time was, I think, the Frank Miller's The Dark Knight trilogy collection, also a hardcover.
Trilogy.
I think it's a trilogy. I'm still working on it. It feels thicker than I expected it to. So I was like, is it 3 books instead of 2? Well,
no, he's isn't the third one coming out?
Oh, maybe I got it wrong then. I don't know. Whoops.
It's like the Master. It's pretty out there title. It's the Master Race or something like that.
Oh, jeez. Okay. No, I don't. Yeah, maybe I got it wrong. I don't know.
No, he's done a lot of work. So yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Nothing beats actually going to the store and like touching something and then not being able to walk away without it.
Yeah.
I need this.
Yeah. Well, gosh, it's in case in point. I've been reading Brian Michael Bendis's Miles Morales Spider-Man stories.
Right.
And I go by the trade paperback. Like I have a hard time going issue by issue.
Yeah.
It's just a lack of patience and having to wait.
Yeah.
So I binge, and we ordered the 5th trade paperback. I forget what that particular arc is called. We've been waiting for 2 months.
Oh.
And it's just, there's no sign of when it's coming in, through Amazon, but it's just, there's not a large abundance right now for some of these books,
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate. So they already dropped the ultimate print, or the ultimate branding. I can't remember what the word is.
Yeah, well, I think, some of the characters were either pulled into the, 616, which has just been, retconned, or not retconned, but I mean, they're starting over again after Secret like Wars,
that.
Right?
Something like that. I think it's closer to like an upgrade rather than a retcon. Because I'm sure things got changed around, but I think ultimately a lot of it stayed the same. But part of it is that they folded a lot of Ultimate, or the parts of Ultimate they wanted to keep into the main continuity.
Oh,
I want to say that's right, and I could be wrong here, but that's what it seems like. I mean, what was it? Miles has his own book now.
Yeah, he's got his own book
in the main continuity, and it's just called. I think it's just called Spider-Man. I think Peter's in The Amazing Spider-Man, and I think Spider-Man.
Just Spider-Man, okay. Kind of like when they had the spectacular books and the sensational sort of going concurrently.
Yeah, they had a lot at some point.
Yeah. Then after Brand New Day, it turned into 3 issues of Amazing a month, and I don't remember if they kept the other books going, but
I'm not sure.
I think the volume of books was still the same. It was just all under the Amazing title.
Oh, okay.
But maybe that's why I can't find my volume 5, because it's a rarity or something.
Sure, it could be.
It could be it.
Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we've been on about Spider-Man? We touched on movies a little bit, and is there anything like comic focused that there's something you feel really good or passionate about that you feel like you wanted to mention that we haven't touched on yet? Or
I think that just in general, I'm always happy to see whenever, there's an author out there who can take something that's already been established and explored, very, very, very deep, and just sort of taking it in a new direction, So, I just recommend for people who I guess are purists, it's not a bad thing, to have like, a favorite era of something. But I mean, I just recommend for anybody to try and check out, if you like the 70s run of Batman, check out, what was going on in the 80s or something, or maybe even, something more recent. I think a lot of times people forget that others share that same appreciation, and they might have a different take on it, and it's worth getting into, and a lot of times, I think sometimes the best way to do it, I shouldn't say best, that's kind of pretentious, but I mean, a good way to do it is if you can read the original stuff. I mean, we're talking, just maybe it's a little hammy, a little bit corny, depending on when it's written, but if you can go back and read that simultaneous to some of the modern stuff, you'll see like a lot of it is mirroring the original, but it's just got a different tone to it because
more like a funhouse mirror,
right? It's just it's just got a different tone to it because the way we interact with each other is as individuals,
it's different.
It's just different nowadays, So. Yeah, check out, if you like a character, check out as many different versions as you can, and it's a lot of fun. If not for anything else, it's definitely entertaining. So yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming and talking to me about comics.
Yeah, definitely. It was good to be here.
All right, let me try that again. Thanks for letting me stay at your place and letting me interview you about comics. But all right, so that was Mr. Excellent, and I really appreciate you spending time with me with comics. And this was the Comic Fiend's Comic Friends, and this is the Comic Fiend signing out.
Thanks for listening to TCFCF. Tune in next week for another conversation about comics. And don't forget, the Comic Fiend is your comic friend too.